STIs are on the rise, and it's because people are no longer using condoms anymore. People must think, oh, that's because people are no longer afraid of HIV, and that's not true. People are very afraid of HIV, which is why people are going on PrEP. What is PrEP? It's the one pill a day that you can take to make sure that you stay HIV negative. If you are high risk, like having multiple sex partners or not using condoms, well, a lot of PrEP users have said goodbye to the condoms and are only relying simply on just PrEP. This would be fine if it wasn't for serophobia. Serophobia still exists among PrEP users. And this is exactly what the problem is. People are afraid of HIV, but are completely dismissive of the bacterial infections. Before PrEP, before antiretroviral therapy, all we had was condoms. I hate what PrEP has become.
Excuse me, if you're thinking about hooking up with somebody tonight, there's a couple of things I need you to remember, because hooking up should be fun and not creepy, okay? 1, always ask your partner his status. 2, check to see if he's on PrEP.
PrEP has become a marketing tool to feed off serophobia. People were supposed to take PrEP and no longer be afraid to sleep with someone who was positive. A lot of people still think of that 1% chance that they may still contract HIV. Now, don't get me wrong. I want there to be more awareness when it comes to PrEP, but we're completely staying silent when it comes to U equals U, what it means to be vitally suppressed, what it means to be undetectable, because people who are HIV positive, who are undetectable, should not by any means be rejected, especially by PrEP users, but that is what's happening nowadays. You should only be worried if a person is newly diagnosed with HIV, or if they don't know their status, or if you don't know their status. But if the person's telling you that they're undetectable, that means they're already taking their meds and they're already badly suppressed. You're not going to contract HIV from that person. HIV stigma is when PrEP users are only seeking out other PrEP users or only negatives and completely excluding HIV positive people, even though they can transmit it to them and they're already protected by the PrEP. I was watching this Mr. commercial.
Did you know that you can get your PrEP for free? With Mr., you can get your PrEP prescribed to you online and delivered right to your door for free.
And one of the comments there really ticked me off. I said, this is great, but we should show more awareness when it comes to U equals U. And someone replied saying, pause is pause. This is where sex positivity goes out the window, because someone is characterizing someone who is HIV positive, whether they're undetectable or not, as just simply being positive. And some people even go further, saying HIV positive shouldn't be sleeping around, shouldn't be sexually active, because they're going to spread HIV. People don't believe the science with undetectable, but they believe the science with PrEP. People should not be living in secret or in fear of their status. They should be well comfortable knowing their status and knowing that they're taking their medication and being undetectable in order for them to no longer transmit it to anybody else. But yet they're still being treated like pariahs. And that is the problem. Before PrEP, before antiretrovirals, all there was condoms. I'm going to show you a clip from a 1988 interview by CNN Crossfire with one of my favorite HIV activists, Peter Staley.
You've got the pink triangle on your shirt, silence your death. I gather that means you're homosexual.
Yes, it is.
Do you know? I don't know how you. Do you know how you caught the disease? But more important than that, if you're 27 years old, you say you got 5 years to live. Looking in the camera, what would you tell some kid, say you had a younger brother, 21 years old, who also might have homosexual tendencies, or say he's 17 or something like that? What would you tell him if you wanted him to live a long life?
I would tell him to use a condom.
Would you tell him not to engage in homosexual activity?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I believe that I believe in safe sex. I'm a sex-positive individual. I still have sex myself.
Mr. Staley, I saw a study out in California. They tested the condoms. 40% breakage rate in one kind of condom. Isn't that insanity?
No, basically that's because of lack of education. There are similar studies that show that if people are properly educated in how to use a condom, and also to use a lubricant, by the way, that has the medicine
this is Russian roulette.
It is not Russian roulette. It is Russian roulette to not give people this information when human nature dictates that they're going to go out there and they're going to have sex anyways. We're sexual beings, and it's just going to happen. Either you're going to provide them the information.
Why? Let me ask you this. Why? Now, we know a lot of young men your age I grew up with, they went into seminary and they didn't have sex. They haven't had sex their whole lives after they went into seminary.
I think that's probably not true. I would think
You
that
mean
there was,
celibacy is impossible?
it's just not going to work. People aren't going to do it, and lots of people are going to die. Now, would you rather have a lot of people cheating on their celibacy with thousands of people dying, or would you rather save those lives and let them have sex?
I think that, well, I don't think we got time to go.
The same way that he advocates for the use of condoms is the same energy I'm trying to give for undetectable. This is before there was antiretrovirals. So people were not undetectable. People were simply just relying on condoms to prevent new infections of HIV. But now we are into biomedical interventions. Biomedical interventions, PrEP, undetectable, are all biomedical interventions. There's literally antiretroviral in your bloodstream preventing new HIV infections. But still, people worry about that 1% risk. This is not sex positivity if HIV positive people who are violently suppressed are not included. Because serophobia is not based on logic, because logic says that being violently suppressed is effective, as well as PrEP. But people believe what they want to believe. And it ends with people being treated like pariahs. I was watching the podcast called Just Fruity by Matt Bernstein, where he had Peter Staley as one of his guest speakers.
In New York. But on the weekends, I would explore the gay bars, and that's where I started having my first conversations about AIDS.
What was the feeling?
This might surprise people to hear. Younger gay men who were kind of clueless. We were just interested in the bars and cock. Our default posture was being dismissive of the risk.
My understanding of the cultural history here is that during the 70s with the gay liberation movement, there was such a push to make gay sex an acceptable, perhaps, non-criminal thing to do consensually. And this idea that you should stop having gay sex to save yourselves felt like it was going against the grain of the movement for sexual liberation and gay liberation.
The HIV activist group in the 80s called ACT UP was much more progressive in terms of sex positivity and condoms than what we have now with commercials of PrEP.
Wonderful things that happened to me is I thought my sex life was over because of HIV. And I joined this movement. One of the beautiful things we did was the country thought gay men they were okay with us dying from this, but they were scared to death of it. And they definitely thought that any gay man who had this should not be a waiter at a restaurant and should definitely not have sex with anybody. They had to disappear somehow. And there was talk of quarantine, active talk of quarantine. ACT UP decided to do a full frontal against that and say, well, actually, the science says, and even the CDC says, condoms work. And our community has developed this new way of having sex, safe sex, we call it. And it works. It's completely protective. And a lot of gay men weren't sure of that. But the movement, we embraced that science and embraced it in our lives. It became politically incorrect for a gay man in ACT UP to push away an HIV positive gay man and say, oh, I'm not going to have sex with you. I can't. I'm too scared of you. You wouldn't last in ACT UP if you got a reputation doing that. So the reverse became true. All of a sudden, I became a hot item.
You could be a slut again.
I could be a slut again.
If PrEP users get to be sluts, so should undetectable people. Because being undetectable means you cannot transmit the virus to somebody else. If you're going to be all about sex positivity and promote PrEP, always include U equals U. Because not enough people are mentioning that. We're living in a time where people who are HIV positive don't feel like they can be honest. That's not sex positivity. People should be awarded for being honest, not rejected. Because when you reject people, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be less likely to be honest for the next person. And talk to your doctor about DoxyPEP if you're someone who's not using condoms. Much love and end HIV stigma.